So here's a little before of this thing going in the shop, but you can hear the rod knock pretty good. Alright, anyhow, I'm getting some space opened up in there and get her inside. Got everything started and out over there. So, 430 Gravely versus a 126 Cub. I definitely see the Gravely is about a full rear wheel length longer, wheelbase wise. So that might help these a good bit. Anyhow, I'll get this thing in here before it knocks and blows the whole way apart. Alrighty guys, so it's been what, like 2 years since I worked on 68 430? And I think as many of you guys know and have heard, at least at this point, if you didn't watch the first part of the clip, that this motor knocks, again. And I think it's something screwed up with the crank, and to top it off, I kind of realized this when I was working on it before, but the crank was broke off there, and what they did is they just threaded, they drilled and tapped it for a stud in the center to hold the flywheel on. So the main reason I didn't change the crank the last time I had this apart, I could not get the flywheel off of this. So with that being said, I am going to give this flywheel a run for its money. If it gives me a run for my money, so be it, but I'm not going to give up so easy this time. And I have a crank to put in it. Just ordered a connecting rod last night. So, without further ado here, I'm going to try, well, I went and got some cylinder studs off a Model L, so that way I could pull that stud out of there, and then B is I can get on there squarely with my big jaw puller and just wind her up and see what happens. And pretty much I'm going to go from there, guys. So, laid off from work now for the winter, so now I got a lot of time. So I ordered a bunch of parts for some projects. I ended up breaking the ring, the top compression ring for the Onan. So that's why you're going to see this before that goes back together. Started trying to do it with a hose clamp. I got clamped the oil rings and the second compression ring, and when I started tapping it down, it was outside of the upper compression ring and it broke it. So I ordered a ring compressor and pliers and another set of rings for that. So don't worry, we'll get that back together. I ain't forgot about it, but we'll be seeing this first. So anyhow, here we go. And I'll take the rest of the electronic ignition off this. The pointsless setup. Okay, I got the flywheel off. I'm not going to lie to you guys. That took a little bit of effort, but it did come off. I think it actually took me like 3 tries to get the puller on there square, and then last time I was hitting on it, it finally went whing and flew off to right about where it's sitting. So I figured while I was at it, I better go get the parts that I need to put this thing back together. Have the crank here. Still got the threads on the end. It looks nice and round and everything. It's got a little bit of weird, what I want to say, it's got a little bit of like weird, it could even just be rust from sitting, but it's just got like some weird wear around the front bearing and stuff. So yeah, I think this will be the first time I've ever actually pulled a crank out of a Kohler and put it back in myself. So I'll have to actually time the motor, kind of scary, and everything else. So I'm going to do a lot of the work on the tractor. You're going to be like, Steve, why are you doing that? Well, every pound I take off this motor when I go to put it on the workbench is every pound lighter. I is not getting any younger. So at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start unhooking things so I can pull the motor off, unhook the wiring, unhook the throttle and choke cables, fuel line, rear hitch. I'll probably dump the oil, and I may even pull out the piston and connecting rod, or I kind of have a half notion, just leave it together like this until I get the connecting rod, just because it'll keep it from flash rusting like stuff has a tendency to do in my shop. Literally because of the dew and it's not climate controlled. If the shop was climate controlled, stuff would stay nice in it, but excuse me, it's not. So anyhow, I guess I'll bring you guys back when I get to that step, or if I find something interesting. But yeah, got it off. It's the old style, the old small style stator, and I have a bunch of these flywheels and charging systems. So, and the charging system worked on this tractor, near as I could tell or remember. So yeah, I'm not gonna play with that and just leave it alone, and we'll go from there. Like I said, later, guys. Alrighty, guys. So it's been a while since I've been on the 430 project, which maybe it hasn't been as long as what I remember. Today's Sunday. It's been about 5 days, I would say. It was last Wednesday when I started monkeying with this, but anyhow, I figured before I did all this work, I wanted to make sure the new rod I got and the crank I got would work together, because, as you guys know, that's what kind of messed me up with the other one. The rod and the crank didn't play well together. So, but everything looks good there. So at this point, I'm ready to peel the motor off of this thing, which I think in the last segment I said I was gonna unhook everything, and basically I decided, you know what, I was done for the day. I went inside, and then that's been about it for like a week till I got parts. So, without further ado, I'll get the motor off, drain the oil, and I guess I'll get this thing on the bench. I've never really done a full Kohler rebuild on here, and I really don't know if I want to show it all or not, but it is what it is. At least this thing will be a lot lighter with the flywheel off of it. So, without further ado, I guess here we go. As you guys can tell, I'm really motivated. Hopefully you guys can see. I don't know if you can or not. I can't clean a spot off the window halfway. But regardless, it's... And now you guys can see the snowflakes. It's cold and snowy today. Today is February 1st, if I'm not mistaken, or is it January 31st? January 31st, my apologies. But today's the Sunday of the big snowstorm down here. Now 48 inches they're saying, so I'll be working on the 430. So here we go. See if I can't get this motor taken apart and put back together today. That's my goal. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll try. Alrighty, guys, got the motor off. It was uneventful. Got the oil drained and everything. Probably should have pulled the cylinder head and stuff. Would have made it a touch later, but the starter is a nice place to grab onto it. So now, if somebody would help me heave-ho it up on the bench. Anybody? No? Alright, I guess I'll do it myself. Okay, I'm hoping you guys can see this since I got the motor pulled. Yeah, you guys can see that. See how loose them gears are? Wow. Wow. That's just... wow, is all I can say to that. So, I guess we're going to be pulling the high-low planetary in this and rebuilding it. Now this one seems tight. Yep, it's loose too. You guys can hear it. So I think I have 3 bushings left. The inner ones seem okay, or the large gears. So, it's probably a good thing I had to pull this motor out and change the crank. I got the input gears pulled off. They come off fairly easy. I knew the other one I did on that 430 with the keyway being sheared, I just couldn't line them up. So, I knew that was my problem. These ones come off pretty easy, and I did pull my back picking this motor up, so that's just great. So the left side of my back hurts now, but anyhow, get this crank changed, and I get this crank changed and get this motor sealed back up. Pull this high-low planetary back out, and then coming down off the bench shouldn't be too awful bad, I hope. What got me was when I picked it up and put it on the bench, like when I heat heave-hoed it up one time, you know. That's what got my back. Oh well. So, keep moving. This thing is definitely oil covered, and there's been apparently a squirrel back in here. And okay, I got the bolts out for the oil pan. Just gonna... I guess the best place to lay this thing is on its front, because the crank... Oh, it actually... Maybe I'll lay it on the starter side, and I'll pull the cylinder head off while it's standing up, because then I can shove the rod up through. I can take the rear... I can take the bearing plate off the back so the crank will slide out. So the motor actually be better if it's spun and laying this way. And then I'll go from there. Alrighty guys, so here's how I'm going to leave it before lunch. Got the piston and rod out just as a note. The oil hole goes towards the cam. And you guys won't be able to see anything up in there, it's kind of dark. Actually, you guys can see better than I think, but we're going to get that crank pulled out here after lunch. Really, as far as pulling the crank out, there's only 4 bolts here. Pull this bearing plate off and then you can slide the crank out, in theory. Never quite goes that smooth, so I'm just going to wait till after lunch and I'll come back out and yank this crank out the rest of the way. I really wish I had some way to like pressure wash this thing or something, get all this oil and stuff off of it, but oh well. But anyhow, till after lunch. So guys, with a little bit of persistence and some hard work, I got it out. And I kind of wanted to show you guys here in the original crank what I was talking about. Let's see if I can set this one up too. So pretty much, I think you guys can see like this like rolled edge. Pretty much, I think somebody cleaned this crank up or something. And what they did is they didn't turn it the whole way to the edge. So I wonder if it's actually 10 under. But it's real gritty and all kinds of stuff has been run through it. So that was that problem. You guys can see how this is busted off here. This is on here. Now, in their defense, they are actually drilled on the end to center them. So, as far as everything going on up here, all these little marks from me trying to get the bearing off the crank inside the block, because if this bearing comes out up against the cam, obviously it'll break the cam, and that's not good. So I do believe I was able to avoid that thus far. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to oil the new crank up. I don't know that I'm really going to clean anything up. Everything looks okay. I may run some sandpaper over this a little bit, but there's no ridge there that I can catch. So pretty much the only thing I'm really worried about is the front sealing surface, which is right here. So clean that up. If I can get this motor put back together, then I'll move on, and I hope I have bushings for this transmission. If not, I'm going to be ordering more parts before I put this back together. So, okay, you guys don't need to see the transmission right now. Still snowing and crappy outside. It's really windy. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but anyhow. Haven't really been showing this process, guys. I'm just kind of trying to get through it and get this thing put back together. Guess while these cranks are laying here, I'm going to say this, the crank on your guys' right is a little bit later one. Because see, this one right here is the top dead center mark, or it's stamped C. And it goes and lines up with that tooth. So that tooth needs to line up. Oh, you guys won't be able to see it, but there's a dot on the cam right there. You guys just have to take my word for it. And this right here has a dot and the line that lines up with that tooth. It needs to line up with that dot on the cam. So, like I said, I'm going to get this cleaned up. Get the crank stuck back in there. Get the end play set. And then I will shove the new, this is actually the new rod, even though it looks older, on the piston. And then we'll go from there, guys. The other thing I'm wondering if this rod was just plain too wide. So it's a possibility. So anyhow, gonna get that going. See what happens. Here we go.